Hello everyone, welcome back to Touch the Fire Twice. I'm Joshua, and I'm here today to do a first impressions haul and overview of the Bath & Body Works White Barn Candle Company 2023 Summer Semi-Annual Sale Blends Candle Collection. But first, if you're new to Touch the Fire Twice, welcome. My mission here is to share my love and passion for fine home fragrance as an enthusiast, an educator, a reviewer, to inspire you to increase your own fragrance knowledge and understanding, ultimately enhancing the scent memories that you create. If you want to learn more about what I do, why I do it, how I do it, you can check out my website at TouchTheFireTwice.com or follow me over on Instagram at TouchTheFireTwice. So if you've not checked out my content beyond the Bath & Body Works realm, please do take a little bit of time to dig around some of the other brands and see what else is out there. I'd love to hear your feedback on my other content. But we are going to dig into the blends collection today. So for all of my Bath & Body Works fellow fans, happy summer semi-annual sale 2023. We're going to talk about the blends collection. This is actually the third blends collection that has been released. They started in the summer 2022 semi-annual sale with the collection here, which you can view my review on those. Then they came back around for the 2022 winter semi-annual sale, which you can view the videos on that collection here, my haul and first impressions overviews. And they brought it back again, which I'm generally a fan of. At least we're getting some sort of, let's call it cohesive in the sense of, you know, the art direction and the idea of what they're doing, what they're bringing to it. And they're new, but new with a twist or familiar favorites, blends that are just kind of interesting. There's some big hits, there's some big flops, some that just don't make sense, and some that are great. So it's something a little bit interesting to dig into, though I'd also love them to be bringing back either weekly candle drops or some of their vault scents that they've done in the past, where they brought back full collections from, you know, Summer Boardwalk. In 2019, they brought back that. From 2012, they brought back their Spring Street Sweet Shop collection in I don't know, was it 2018 or 2020 perhaps, from 2014. So they do sometimes bring things back from the vault. They're more leaning into these blends, which are fine, but I'd love to see a little bit of both when it comes to semi-annual sale collections that come out. With this, there were 6 fragrances, 2 of which were returning, 4 of which are new. I purchased 5 of the 6. I did not purchase the Pineapple Mango Fresh Balsam. I really love Fresh Balsam, not a big fan of Pineapple Mango. I did purchase and review it when it came out, the first release in summer 2022. I burned a little bit of it, haven't touched it since, no need to buy another one, but I did buy the 5 others. So we'll dig into those. I will talk about 2 other candles that I purchased in this semi-annual sale haul. I did purchase shower gels and some wallflowers and some hand soaps. Not sure if I'm gonna do a full haul on those. I tend to focus more so on the home fragrance candle side of things on the channel here with Bath & Body Works White Barn Candle Company. But if you have interest in seeing that or hearing about that, please let me know. Could consider bringing some of that content here as well. So let's dig right on in. Really quickly, I'll just start with the 2 candles that are outside of the 5, and then we'll dig into the 5 within that collection. So one being the 25th fragrance anniversary of Cucumber Melon. Wild to think that it's been that long, but also I'm thinking back, like in the early 2000s when I purchased this, I didn't know that it was just, you know, 4 or 5 years old. It came out in 98, so interesting to know. Very, very simple. This is their kind of traditional pour where it's colored wax. Simple square label. Retail on this is $24.95. Of course, it is $10.95 at least on the first day of the semi-annual sale. It is your straightforward Cucumber Melon. I won't even get into the notes, the review. But maybe at some point I could do an in-depth sniff review on this. There's some other melon and Cucumber Melon candles that are coming out these days. 2 from Lofco, including Paloma Melon, that I'll be reviewing in the next week or 2. That is good to compare to this because this is really the most traditional, straightforward melon, non-watermelon fragrance out there. And it is exactly what you know. I think it's a love it or hate it for a lot of folks. For me, it's mostly nostalgic, but it is a nice, you know, fruity, borderline aromatherapeutic kind of spa fragrance. Because of that cucumber, it brings it down from just like a fruity, you know, edible kind of fragrance. So I purchased that. I'll burn that at some point. And then I also found, I was really excited to find this. This is from the 2022 Winter Blends collection that came out for the semi-annual sale in late 2022 as the second grouping. Cinnamon Stick and Waikiki Beach Coconut. Again, you can see the video here of the in-depth sniff haul overview first impressions on that blends collection. But this one I was excited about back then because though the blend is supposed to be the Cinnamon Stick candle standalone fragrance and Waikiki Beach Coconut single standalone fragrance, it's not. Some of these are truly mashups of the actual blends of the 2 candle names or fragrance names on here, and others are completely different fragrances that share some of the same notes, and for marketing purposes, like, well, let's say that it's this candle and this candle. In this case, this is not actually the same sort of fragrance blend or the same specific oils from Cinnamon Stick and Waikiki Beach Coconut. It is Tropical Spice from 2009 or 10, a Slacken & Co. standard, a classic. For me, probably my top 5 summer Bath & Body Works fragrances of all time. Came back once in like 2019 or 2020. Stocked up a little bit on it then. I got 1 or 2 of these last time because Though this says cinnamon stick, Waikiki Beach coconut, it is through and through tropical spice. Notes on it: vanilla, coconut cream, nutmeg, and cinnamon stick. There's also rum in this. It is just so borderline between conceptual and gourmand and fruity and tropical and resort, and it is just such a beautiful, slightly sweet, borderline floral, a little bit earthy, not quite spicy, but just a really incredibly unique summer fragrance. So why am I talking about this now? So this was the one candle outside of the current blends collection that was actually on the floor at my store, and they had a whole stack of them. They probably had 30 plus of this. The pour date on this is late 2022, so this is not a re-pour and some random, bring back. This really is from the leftovers from the semi-annual sale of winter 2022. And it was on the table with the others. I figured it would be $10.95 like the others, but when I got to the register and they were ringing out the transaction, this rang up at 75% off, so $6.37. With my 20% off semi-annual sale coupon, ended up being $5.10. So of course I said, hold please, ran to the middle of the store and grabbed a couple of them because I love the fragrance. It clearly didn't sell all that great when it came out as this name. And so who knows if and when it will ever be back. And so I wanted to stock up because it is sort of in my, again, top 5 summer scents. So I got, I think, 4 of these actually, but $20 for a retail $25.50 candle for 4 of them. It's just so wonderful. I don't know if this is gonna be in many stores or any stores. I went to the biggest store in my district, and so I could see why they would have that back stock, but that was the only candle they had at 75% off. Now, let's dig into my first impressions overview of the 2023 Summer Semi-Annual Sale Blends collection. First up, let's start with Island Margarita and Vanilla Bean. Getting into the art direction, the aesthetic of this, very, very simple because you're getting white wax or off-white wax in all of these. Some decorative lids, some plain lids. It really seems like they're using just a catch-all of lids. Like these were used on some of the winter semi-annual sale 2022 blends collection, but a lot of them are your traditional chrome silver Bath & Body Works lid, and then one other one has one other design. So I feel like they're probably extra runoffs as opposed to lids that were created just for this collection. And it's kind of got this watercolor, I forget what it's called, but it's that new kind of arts and craft trend where you put this sort of acrylic or oil-based paint on the surface of water and kind of swirl it around, and then you can dip certain products in it, t-shirts or white sneakers or I'm sure a million different things, and it attaches to whatever you put in there. And it just has that kind of oil slick, that swirly, not quite watercolor, but that swirled look, which is kind of interesting. Digging into most importantly the fragrance though. Notes on this one: Island Mango, Madagascar Vanilla Beans, and Sea Salt. Now, Island Margarita is a fragrance that I think is nice. It's very, very sweet. It actually smells nothing like a margarita to me. I don't get much of any lime in it. They've had lime ice and key limes and different lime-focused fragrances. Island Margarita, for me, is not one of those. There's some mango, a lot of kiwi, very tropical, not quite even necessarily tropical beverage to me, but sure, like a tropical fruity fragrance that is nice and seems to be very, very popular. It's back pretty much every year. Not my ultimate favorite, but it's very sweet and actually not a margarita. It is, tequila, lime, a hint of maybe orange citrus, a Cointreau or Grand Marnier, something like that, is not what you're getting in the traditional Island Margarita candle. But it is nice. Mixed with Vanilla Bean, which is just your creamy gourmand, kind of a base for a lot of fall fragrances when it comes to that not quite buttercream, not quite whipped meringue, but certainly more of a gourmand kind of edible vanilla bean versus a floral vanilla bean or just an earthy vanilla bean. Usually the vanilla bean of Bath & Body Works is borderline foodie, but a really rich, warm, sweet vanilla bean. So putting those two together, I'd say it's pretty authentically a mixture of these two fragrances. Not exactly what I was expecting, however. The notes are kind of silly, like mango, vanilla bean, and sea salt. Again, where's the lime? Where's whatever? That just happens to be what this Island Margarita is. But for me, I'm interested when I burn this, what it'll come out to be, because I do get, let's say 60% of the Island Margarita scent, which is that kiwi, fruity, I suppose mango, a little bit green, but very, very, very sweet tropical fragrance. And the vanilla bean in here, it almost leans like, you know what I'm getting in here? I'm getting a savory scent that it's almost like a popcorn, or if you think Jelly Belly jelly beans, buttered popcorn jelly bean, and maybe even some of the different popcorn fragrances that Bath & Body Works has had. I'm not a big fan of those. I know, was it last summer that buttered popcorn was around? That really savory corn and artificial butter scent kind of candle is actually what I get in this. In the background, more so than vanilla bean, there's a creaminess, but it really is like a savory, sweet buttered popcorn Island Margarita. Like right in the middle of it, specifically to my childhood, thinking of the buttered popcorn Jelly Belly jelly beans, which had that little bit salty, savory, kind of artificial butter flavor. And this is hitting my nose right in the middle, just like that. So for me, this is a bit of an odd one. I like that it's either margarita calmed down a bit versus just so high on the fruits without much going on base-wise for me. But I don't know if this kind of savory cornmeal / raw popcorn with artificial butter is what I wanted in this, and that really is what I get in this. I'm curious if anyone else gets that. So yeah, it's like a buttered popcorn island margarita blended together. Quite strange for me. Then we move on to white gardenia and tiki beach. Pretty colors on this one, a nice blue, green. And we know that white gardenia and tiki beach are two of the most popular fragrances. They're practically in their core collection year round. Tiki beach came out way back when during Slack & Co era, I want to say 2011 or 2012 perhaps, in a tropical collection. It really is that high-end resort. It's hot, it's got some white florals, it's got a bit of like an earthy coconut, a heavy hit of pineapple in there, some orchid perhaps. Really, really nice, elevated summer evening, sophisticated resort fragrance for me. White gardenia, not the biggest fan, but very, very, very popular. Comes out in many names, many iterations and repackages over the years, probably the past 9-10 years at Bath & Body Works. So putting these two together makes sense. And notes on this one: classic white gardenia, fresh picked greenery, warm vanilla musk, and toasted coconut. Sniffing it, it's a pretty straight blend of the two. You certainly get that heady, bright, white, hot gardenia, a little bit sharp, certainly powdery. They're probably good 50-50. I mean, the tiki beach is there. It's toned down on like the pineapple and the juiciness and like the kind of almost acidity of the fruit you typically get in it, leaning a little bit more on that musk, but it's also, I don't know if it's the gardenia floral or the coconut is also tempering the sharpness of the sheer musk, which you sometimes get the, oh god, of this feeling where it chokes you out. You don't get that in here. Not that Tiki Beach does that, but obviously musks tend to do that for a lot of folks. And a warm vanilla musk could do that, but it really is a good balance. It's not honestly quite as strong as I would have expected for two powerhouse fragrances. It's almost like I get the tops of one and I get some of the bottoms of the other. And then in the middle, it's just a little bit blank in a way. Like there's a little bit of, I'm being very picky here, but just a little bit of like kind of a crayony waxy note in the middle of this for me. I'm curious how this burns. I'm a little concerned that it may be one of those that just smells a little bit waxy or kerosene-y. Usually that's due to something being overwicked or underwicked and more of like a scientific formulation error versus the fragrance oil blend itself. So it could be fine. It could be a fine burner and still smell a little strange to me, but yeah, there's just a little something waxy in the middle there that, I don't know, but I'm not the biggest fan of white gardenia anyhow, so it could just be that I don't love that fragrance all that much. But it is, for those who love either of those fragrances, I think probably will be pretty popular with the masses. I'll save my most intriguing for the last two, and then I will go here next to Rosewater and Ivy and Mahogany Teakwood. This is one that did come out in the original Blends collection launch in summer 2022 semi-annual sale. Notes on this one: rich mahogany, black teakwood, soft rose petals, and rain-kissed English ivy. If you are familiar with my channel, you know I'm not a fan typically of mahogany teakwood. I like Rosewater and Ivy. It's a very traditional, acceptable, kind of middle-of-the-road rose fragrance. It doesn't lean too heavily powdery because it is freshened up and greened up by that Ivy fragrance. Getting my nose on it with these two together, I do like it, although sniffing it now, I thought I remembered it being a little bit more rose forward in the past, whereas this one is quite mahogany teakwood forward. I'm sure Kent at the Candle Channel will be like, yeah, of course, it's mahogany teakwood, it takes over everything, which I tend to agree with, but I thought there was a little bit more rose to this. I enjoyed it at the time burning it. It was a way to have a slightly more heavy, let's call it sophisticated rose, but just like a little bit more depth, similar to like the patchouli and rosewood fragrance that they have, similar to the rose and leather or leather and rose they had with that collection that came out around Candle Day, December 2022. So just another variation on rose. Rose is super popular. I mean, it's one of the most popular notes in fine fragrance across time, but especially now it's having a bit of a resurgence in many fine fragrances and in home fragrance. You think 8-9 years ago, there were almost no rose-based scents at Bath & Body Works, and now there are a ton of them. So I do like that this is a variation on that. Not the biggest fan of mahogany teakwood, but it works for what it is, and certainly anyone who loves mahogany teakwood should love this. And if you like Rosewater and Ivy and are okay with something that leans a little bit more conceptual and darker and not as fresh garden, then you might like mahogany teakwood, the blend of mahogany teakwood and Rosewater and Ivy. Now getting into the two that I find most interesting in idea and also in the actual fragrances. First up is Watermelon Lemonade and Eucalyptus Mint. Now, talking about these two fragrances, Watermelon Lemonade first came out in I think I called it like the Lakeside collection, 2013. I think it was one of the first large cohesive collections that was after Slatkin & Co. left. So there were a ton of fragrances in there. You can actually see the video I have on that here. I loved some of those fragrances. Some of them started there and have stuck around, like Watermelon Lemonade. Others were one and done and never came back, but there are some really, really great scents. And it was a cohesive sort of summer, not quite picnic, but lakeside. So you had s'mores, you had a campfire fragrance, you had dockside and lakeside, which were sort of conceptual aquatic fragrances. You had your Watermelon Lemonade, you had Boathouse Row, just a really interesting collection. That's, I believe, if I remember correctly, where Watermelon Lemonade made its first appearance. I purchased it that one time, burned it a few times. I've never purchased it again. I know people love it. It's one of the most popular fragrances there. The idea of a Watermelon Lemonade fragrance sits fine with me. I think it is so thin and so weak. Of course, somewhat artificial in the watermelon, as watermelon almost always is in anything other than the actual watermelon you're eating, because it's one of those fragrances, and I've talked about this in other videos that you may remember, is a lot of times what we think, you know, strawberries taste like, and therefore should smell like, and grapes or watermelon. In our minds, especially when we're getting it in processed candies or foods, aside from the actual fruit or food itself, and in wax and home fragrance or in any kind of fragrance, what we're looking for is really the artificial. So you're looking for kind of the Jolly Rancher version of that, or the flavor of watermelon or the flavor of strawberries. And really, when you bite into watermelon or you bite into strawberries, it is not nearly as sweet or as robust, typically, as the artificial fragrance that you're used to in your Jolly Ranchers or in your bubblegum or in a lot of beverages or in candles, things like that. I would say, all that to say, it's not particularly, you know, like a bubblegummy kind of super, super sweet artificial watermelon, but it doesn't land authentic for me. And it just, I don't know. Watermelon Lemonade actually is gonna be have a greener flavor and almost a hint of a savoriness to it if you were to make it like from scratch, truly. And I just don't care for the candle. Eucalyptus Mint, really strong, really popular, you know, lives now just really primarily as Eucalyptus Mint and Rain is a variation on that. And the Eucalyptus Spearmint is Eucalyptus Mint in the Aromatherapy collection. But at one point they did have a Eucalyptus Mint and ampersand collection that was a test collection, failed, I believe. You can actually see a video here that I did on that in, I want to say 2012 or 13. Eucalyptus Mint and Rain was where that came from. Eucalyptus Mint and Vanilla, Eucalyptus Mint and Lavender, Eucalyptus Mint and Spice, Eucalyptus Mint and Apple, Eucalyptus Mint and Guava. Some really interesting blends there. It failed just because I think they were trying to go on Eucalyptus Mint as being like the fragrance that everyone wanted and just add things to it. The way they have done that with things like mahogany teakwood, they could have a single collection with all of them in it, but they tend to make them more seasonal, which is probably smart. But all that to say, Eucalyptus Mint, I do like it. It is so intensely strong that I don't often purchase it because now it's not really quite as nuanced as I'd like in a Eucalyptus Mint spa-like botanical fragrance. But I was happy to see that in here. Notes on this one: watermelon ice, Meyer lemon, and crisp eucalyptus. And getting my nose on it, I'll say it, I really like this on first sniff. This is not for those who like watermelon lemonade for the foodie or, you know, drinkable, edible aspect, don't go in this thinking that that's not what you get here. You're not, you know, you don't drink eucalyptus flavored things typically. And Eucalyptus Mint is in here, but it is really nicely balanced between the two. This is one of those fragrances that, like some of these, I do think is straight up the oils that they use for each of these, generally speaking. It's not, hey, let's use these popular names with an entirely different blend of notes. This really is taking pieces of each of these two fragrances, which is, I think, how they should do the blends for authenticity's sake. There is this sweetness from the watermelon. It almost leans a little bit more authentic because this goes more spa-like, more aromatherapeutic, more botanical. You're getting maybe a little bit of the rind in there. Similar to the type of melon that you sometimes will get in, say, a cucumber melon, although of course cucumber melon is quite sweet. The lemonade, I'd say almost non-existent in here, although I'd argue it's almost non-existent in the watermelon lemonade candle as well. It's not like that sugared lemon, really, really strong lemonade that they sometimes will do. So I don't really get much in the way of lemon in here. It's really like a fresh watermelon, green watermelon. It's not supremely sugary sweet with eucalyptus mint, but it's not the knock you down. Like eucalyptus mint, when you smell the aromatherapy, that is so strong. It's so heavy on the mint. It's so heavy on that really powdery, kind of astringent eucalyptus, but more so like the airy, powdery eucalyptus, where it is uplifting, it is bright, but it is super dry, powdery, airy. And you get that in here, but I don't know if it's the sweetness of the watermelon or maybe the cooling aspect of the mint, but it's nicely balanced that it brings it down so that it's not leaning too sweet or too sugary from the watermelon lemonade, not leaning too airy and powdery from the eucalyptus and the mint. There's a bit of a creaminess in here, which I'm not sure where it's coming from. It actually reminds me a little bit, if you watched my review on Lofco's Restorative Trio 3 set of candles in nice little ceramic tumblers, there was a cucumber mint fragrance in there. And for me, for a Lofco kind of high-end conceptual brand that does seem very authentic and using natural essential oils, as opposed to leaning more heavily on synthetic fragrance oils, I actually called that one out as being a little too sweet for me. This one leans sweet, but I kind of expect that with Bath & Body Works. But it reminds me a little bit of this. That was a cucumber mint. This doesn't say cucumber, but it very well could be, and there's some green notes. I like it. If you think of this as a spa fragrance, not really a drinkable summer treat, and you may like it. I think it's very nicely balanced between the melon, the mint, eucalyptus, and again, something else in the middle that's a little bit creamy. Calling out the lemon in there, I think that's just that's marketing. I don't get a primary note of being lemon, but I'm sure it's a little bit there, just like, you have lemon in water, just like a little bit of like the lemon peel perhaps. But I like this. We'll see what it's like burning, but I'm a bit surprised. This is one that I thought I would like the least, and it's probably my favorite of the ones I've talked about so far. And then finally, this surprising, confusing one, Marshmallow Fireside and Black Cherry Merlot. So Marshmallow Fireside, a classic, came out in 2011, has come back every single year since then. I don't have to explain it. I think everyone knows it. It is a Slacken & Co. classic. It has been a little bit watered down, a little bit tweaked over the years, as probably fragrance oil suppliers have changed, over the years. But it is that sweet, ooey gooey, roasted, a little bit of that kind of ambery embers of your wood chips, some cedar in the fire as it's just burning out. It's just such a beautiful fall fragrance that can work through the summer if you think more of like, summertime bonfires and things like that, but it does lean quite fall for me, and I think for most people. We've seen Marshmallow Fireside kind of mashed up with a few other fragrances in the past, not in blends collections straightforward, promoted that way, but certainly in other blends over the years at Bath & Body Works that have been clearly influenced by the Marshmallow Fireside fragrance formulation. Adding in a Black Cherry Merlot, on paper or first hearing it, I was not thrilled with that, because for me, Black Cherry Merlot is, if I had to say my least favorite popular Bath & Body Works fragrance, at least in home fragrance, I think it would probably be Black Cherry Merlot, because the people who love it are obsessed. It's clearly like a top 5 fragrance for Bath & Body Works, which fine, but it's Black Cherry. There's no Merlot. There's no wine to that. And I mean, I don't want to, like, fruit wine really isn't even, it could be argued, is it wine? Okay. Not really. Like, yes, a true Merlot grape may have some cherry nuances to it, but it's not going to taste like cherry juice or fruit punch or fruit wines where it's like, oh, you're having a blueberry wine. Like, that's fine. There's a market for that. If you love it, love what you love. Not judging it. But when we're talking about traditional wine, it is grapes fermented. That's it. And so Black Cherry Merlot, there is no grape Merlot wine fragrance scent to that. It, for me, for me, it smells just like dark black cherry juice or dark cherry, not quite fruit punch, not like your high C, but it, like Robitussin or Dimetapp elixir, cough syrup, not medicinal, but that same thick, artificial, heavy, dark black cherry taste or fragrance that I'm not a big fan of, especially marketing it as Black Cherry Merlot. What's interesting is Black Cherry Merlot first made an appearance in home fragrance in the Cork and Vine collection 2014, which I was gonna point here, but I actually don't know that I have a review on it. If I do, you'll see it here. But that came out, they had Wine Cellar in that collection and they had Black Cherry Merlot. The Black Cherry Merlot in that collection was not the Black Cherry Merlot that everyone knows in hand soap and candle form over the past 9 years. It was a true wine fragrance, and there was a bit of a cherry nuance to it, but it smelled like actual red wine. Could be Merlot, hard to say. The nuance in wine and, artificial fragrances in wax, it's, up for debate, but it was authentic in the sense that it was clearly going after a red wine fragrance with a little bit of a cherry aspect to it. And then the next time it came out, it was straight up Black Cherry Merlot, which really is just black cherry juice. If you love it, fine, but it's a fruity fragrance. It's not a wine. I will argue anyone on that. So to throw that in here, I was like, all right, well, I don't know, like, Black cherry with marshmallow fireside. What's that gonna look like? Let's find out. Notes on this one: toasted marshmallow, crystallized amber, and wild black cherries. Now, before I even get my nose on it, I like that they called out the crystallized amber because that shows that there is more beyond just gourmand, foodie, edible in your marshmallow fireside, because that crystallized amber lives in that fragrance, and obviously no one's going around eating amber. Sniffing it. I really like it on cold. I don't know if that's just because it's June and I'm not quite ready for fall, but once it hits in 6 weeks, I'll be burning my autumn candle and some early fall fragrances probably by August 1st, so like in less than 60 days. So I don't know if I'm just excited for marshmallow fireside because it's such a nostalgic and amazing scent that hits so many marks of being conceptual and sophisticated and rich, but also kind of sweet and creamy. Because this is like 80% marshmallow fireside. The black cherry merlot, maybe it comes out in burning, but the black cherry that's in here, I don't know that it's necessarily the same black cherry fragrance that is in the black cherry merlot scent profile of Bath & Body Works. I could see it almost being like cherry wood. There are plenty of high-end fragrances out there that kind of mix your woods with a bit of a sweet, rich gourmand, and maybe either some actual like dark dried cherry or cherry bark or a dark cedar, something where it mixes like a little bit of that dark fruits with a dark resinous wood. And that's more what I get in here. Not a lot on the cherry, a little hint of that sweetness, almost like kind of like a tobacco note perhaps, or when you smell like that cherry tobacco fragrance in fine fragrance, it almost seems more like that. Super, super kind of in that sophisticated angle. So someone who loves the fruity, sweetie black cherry merlot and doesn't like amber or woodsy or marshmallow fireside fragrance or fragrance families won't like this, but I think it's really nice. I'm curious, I need to do a side-by-side actually with marshmallow fireside to see how different they are and burn this. But I like it enough that I actually bought two just because I was like, okay, I think I like this. And I think it'll probably be pretty popular based on the two existing fragrance names that are on the label. Hopefully it burns nicely as well, so TBD, I'll let you know on that. So that wraps my, at least initial, Bath & Body Works Summer 2023 Semi-Annual Sale Candle Haul and First Impressions overview of the Blends collection. I'd love to know what you think of the existing Blends collection, what you purchased, any fun finds that you found in your store that you weren't expecting, or maybe got a great sale on. Happy hunting out there. Let me know what you purchased, and until next time, take care.